Hey, thanks so much for getting my Beyond Small Talk masterclass. You missed watching it live, but now you can, of course, watch the replay. So I just wanted to give you a quick heads up. Um, there's a bunch of interaction that happens on the masterclass, where I was interacting with all the people that were live. Unfortunately, you can't really get a feel for that because it didn't record the chat window, but all the content is still there, and at the end there's a little bit of a Q&A, and I can't wait to show you how to get beyond small talk to the meaningful conversation so you can connect with anyone. Have fun. Before we get started, I actually was looking for an image where somebody's raising their hand. That was the one that stood out to me. So, and raising your hand when you're just in the chat means just typing yes. Cool. So if you've ever been to an event or networking type of event or a party where you felt like you were stuck in a boring conversation when you'd rather meaningfully connect with someone, just type yes in the chat or raise your hand if you're there on video. Yes, a couple of yeses. Cool. And if you've ever walked away from a conversation thinking that, damn, I wish I could have said something better, or I wish I had a question or something to go to make this more interesting, give me another yes or hand. Very good. That's exactly what I'm hoping to cover here today. Before we start, I wanted to thank you all for showing up, because I know everybody's time is really valuable. And I appreciate that you're spending this next about 90 minutes with me. I'm hoping, or I'm not hoping, this will finish around 4 o'clock, but the presentation part will be about an hour, and then there's going to be some Q&A at the end. Plus, there'll be some Q&A in between. So whenever you have questions, just type them in the chat box, which I see you've all figured out how to use by now. And then I'll get to them just at the end of every block. Does that sound good? Cool. So you all know, I think, that I created these Ask Deep Questions cards. And every once in a while in this little masterclass, I'll actually be asking you one of the questions from the cards. And if you can access the chat box and just comment with your answer, that will help all of us on this call also get to know each other a little bit better. So we'll start off with the first kind of little experiment question, because we already talked about where everybody's from and what your hometown is known for. But the one question, which is actually one of my favorite questions in the whole deck, is what does the word home mean to you? If you had to give a one-sentence answer to that question, what would it be? And that actually is, like I said, one of my favorite questions that I use all the time with people here in Toronto, because people are from all over the place. People have very different backgrounds, and just the word home in every language has a different meaning. So for me in German, I'm actually lucky because home has two different translations. And one is a place that you live, and the other one is a place of belonging, the place where you have roots. So I feel I'm quite lucky to say that Germany, where I have my roots, where I grew up, is one home. And the other one is Toronto, where I live right now, this apartment. So yeah, I really like what Jenna is saying. It's being safe and surrounded by my family, because that almost means that home travels with you wherever you go, right? Which is kind of interesting when you look at it that way. So anyway, this is just one experiment of how this masterclass will be a little bit interactive. So whenever there's questions on the screen, or I ask you to type something in the comment box, which I see you're doing really well, I'd love to hear your opinions, and we'll do little polls and surveys as well. But let's get started. You all showed up to learn a bit more about how to navigate and get beyond small talk. So here's just a quick recap on what we'll cover today. The first one is for anybody who's dealing with some anxiety when it comes to talking to strangers. We'll talk about how to change that mindset and really get the most out of a conversation. And I believe that's the most important thing before you even attend an event or go out and like want to connect with people is having the right intentions. And then the second part is going to be a little bit, this is like my secret answer to the question, so what do you do? Because let's face it, you can't really go through life without having somebody ask you that question. And I don't think it's the best question to ask someone, so I'll share some better questions as well. But everybody, I think, needs to have a good answer to that question to get from that maybe boring small talk conversation into a meaningful one. And then at the end, yes, I'll share some other questions that I use all the time, and maybe we can brainstorm. Maybe you guys have some good questions that you use too. And that's for the webinar. And if that sounds like something you want to learn, give me a quick thumbs up or type a yes in the chat box. And like I said, if there's more questions, we can get to that at the end. One more thing I wanted to share, because I don't want there to be any surprises. Some of you might have read from an email that I'm starting this group program next week called Find Your People. So at the end, I would love to share a little bit more about what that entails and see if there's, if it's a good fit for what you're looking for. So if you want to go a little bit deeper with what I'm offering, you can stick around. If not, that's totally fine. But there will be a bonus that I'm giving away to anybody who's watching this live and staying until the end. Cool. All right, if you are ready, let's get into it. First, the interactive part. What actually is small talk? So if you type in the chat box, how would you define small talk, or how does it feel when you are engaging in a small talk conversation? Maybe we can crowdsource a couple of answers and see what we can come up with together. And I'll start with some of them by the time you guys post your answers. But to me, small talk is definitely something that is not interesting, boring, meaningless talk. See, Jonathan Kelly, meaningless chat to kill time and fill awkward gaps. Yep. Where would be a place that you have to fill or kill some time? Like, where does small talk usually happen, out of curiosity? For me, I also would say that small talk a lot of times feels fake, because you have to talk about something that you're actually not interested to talk about. At least that's like it is for me when people start talking about sports. I love doing sports, but I'm not a big fan of watching sports. So whenever that topic comes up, I have nothing really to contribute. Yes, in the office, there's small talk. At conferences. Yeah, I think any place where people go to network, there's a lot of small talk, because I believe nobody wants to be doing small talk, but they just don't have the tools to get out of it in a way. So here are some of the words that I kind of brainstormed earlier today when it comes to small talk. For me, it's something that is unnecessary, that's fake, that's endless, exhausting. It can be awkward or even annoying and very tedious. So it's definitely something that for me, for the last many, many years, was something that I just thought shouldn't exist. Like, small talk should not exist, because I actually found this really interesting quote that says, introverts don't hate small talk because we dislike people. We hate small talk because we hate the barrier it creates between people. And that's exactly how I felt about small talk. For me, it's creating this barrier of connecting with people. Because a lot of times when we do small talk, we don't talk about the things that we actually care about. Like Kelly was saying, it's just to kill some time or make it less awkward. So in the last 2 years, I probably changed this whole outlook of thinking about small talk as this barrier. And I realized, okay, what if we could turn this barrier into a bridge? Because think about it this way. Think about, when was the first time you met one of your good friends? I assume that there was some part of small talk that was happening even in the first conversation with somebody who's now a really good friend or connection. Or think about how you met your partner, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, wife, husband, and the first conversation probably wasn't that deep. I actually now think that if we can learn how to use small talk and take it from like what is this barrier and turn it into a bridge and navigate through it really quickly to get to the meaningful conversations, that's a really important skill that you need to have to, like when you're dating, when you want to connect with coworkers in the office, probably even to get promoted with your superiors. That's a really good skill to have, so you don't get stuck in this and you actually connect with people heart to heart. And for me, this is my quick story of how I started developing this. So this was me when I think was maybe 7 or 8 years old. And that's maybe the time that I started my love for hats. And then that love for hats turned into a love of bow ties. These are my wedding pictures. And actually this golden bow tie is a really good metaphor for, I guess, finding my people, but also finding the people that I could have really meaningful conversations with. So first time I wore this bow tie at my wedding, and then was like, well, I own it. Let me at least use it to some networking events. And it was really interesting how I went to, this is at TEDx Toronto. I started connecting with all the other people also wearing bow ties, and we had this weird little moment. And from then on, I called it my magic bow tie, which some of you might actually be familiar with because I kept wearing it everywhere. It was kind of like the hat and the bow tie was a little bit of becoming my brand. And then I met this person. And if you know this person, Jed from the World Domination Summit, just give me a quick yes in the comments. I know Albert knows him. It's a conference in Portland that is actually happening in about a month and a half that I'm going back to. But we were just walking at the opening party, saw each other's bow ties, stopped, and we're like, hey, I really like your bow tie. And we started a conversation there. And I feel like now we've become really good friends just based on that one initial moment of finding somebody that is similar to us. Like we connected on this love for bow ties. Okay, I'm doing a quick little survey. Any other bow tie lovers in this class? Let me know in the comments, but I'll continue with the story because it was a year later that I then hosted a little meetup at the same conference for people wearing bow ties. And a few people showed up. A year later, I did another event and even more people showed up. And we even did this whole catwalk on at the closing night party. And it all started with me wearing this bow tie and using it as the spark to start a conversation, which was kind of really interesting. So I think even the first conversation we had about bow ties could be classified as small talk. Like it wasn't really a deep, meaningful conversation. It was just something that we both noticed and connected on. So now that we have built this really interesting relationship, I see small talk as the mediocre appetizer before enjoying a big, delicious feast. And that's actually my first tip of reframing the mindset around small talk. If small talk is not the end of a conversation, but just the very short beginning of a long, meaningful relationship, then I think it's much easier to endure it or get through it. And if you know the tools on how to take it from small talk to meaningful conversations, then you don't even have to stay there for very long. And I actually believe that everybody wants to have more meaningful conversations, but might not have the right tools to get out of it. So here's 3 mindsets or mindset shifts that I can share with you that actually will help you connect with people more, especially if you have a little bit of social anxiety. So if you're worried about what to say, or if you approach, or if you go to an event and you're not even sure how to approach someone, this is again one trick I got from the World Domination Summit, from this conference, because I started believing that strangers are just friends I haven't met yet. Which means if you go into a conversation with someone that you don't know, but you almost pretend that maybe you went to high school together or you have something in common with them, haven't talked in years, just that energy that you bring to that conversation will make the other person feel a lot more comfortable. So now whenever I go to an event, that's the one thing I keep in mind. I just think everybody that I'm approaching is just a friend I haven't met yet. And if there is anybody in this class who maybe has some social anxiety, there's another trick that I started using in the beginning. Now I feel like I'm a lot more comfortable with talking to strangers. In the beginning, I really had to push myself. And that is doing a countdown. So there's this interesting thing that happens whenever you want to do something and there's some resistance. The longer you wait before you take action, the harder it is to actually do it. So think about jumping off a cliff or off the tower into the pool, which is something that really terrifies me as I'm afraid of heights a little bit. The longer you stand on the top looking down, the harder it actually will get to jump. So if you feel like you are a little bit anxious to talk to a stranger, just count down from 3. Go, oh, I want to talk to this person, 3, 2, 1, and then just take the first step in their direction, and then just take another step. And before you know it, you'll be standing in front of them, and then you can have a conversation. It has worked really well for me, so I would love to hear if that's something you might try or might apply next time you go to an event. Let me know in the comments. And I'll share the second mindset shift that I actually really like. This is something that is I got from Michaela Chung. She is a big introvert and she has a book about introverts. And she defines, or she calls this, imagine yourself as the host of your own space. So think about when you host a party at your own place or invite people in, what would you do to make them comfortable? But the same thing applies to when you're going to an event and you think about that space that you have around yourself. What could you do to make people feel welcome and comfortable? And I think it starts with having an open body language, of smiling and eye contact, which are the 3 main ingredients to connect with anyone. If you do those 3 things, people will actually want to approach you, rather than if you stand at the side of your room, maybe you're on your phone, you have your arms crossed, nobody really feels comfortable to even approach you because you're closed off. So even just putting your phone away and having open body language and smiling at people will get people to come to you. And the third one is assume that you have something in common with your partner, even if you appear different, which goes back to the idea of strangers are just friends you haven't met yet. If you do think that you're very different to the people that you're hanging out with, then there's always going to be some resistance in connecting and sharing and maybe asking questions. But if you believe that you, underneath everything, you do have something in common, then you'll connect so much faster. And your goal should almost be to find those commonalities. I would actually say that by using my Ask Deep Questions cards and having conversations that go much below the surface, I've realized that we all have a lot of things in common, but we rarely talk about those, especially when it comes to the dreams, the fears, the worries, the big goals, the things that we want to accomplish in life. I think we're all have very similar things, but those rarely come up in a small talk conversation. So if you believe that that is something that you have in common and you can stick through the small talk and get to the meaningful conversations, then it'll be all worth it. And I'll share one more quick thing. The one other barrier that happens often at events or when you talk to people that kind of blocks that connection from happening is this fun little device that is super useful in many situations. And I love technology. I use it a lot. But when it comes to human connections, this actually will make everybody else feel less important if it is visible. So if you're meeting people for lunch or coffee and you put your phone on the table, it sends this subconscious message that the other person is not the most important thing to you right now. And especially if a message or a phone call comes in and then you immediately check it, it just, like, I'm probably sure you've all have experienced this with someone else replying to a text message while you're meeting with them or while you're in a conversation, maybe even mid-sentence, and it just doesn't feel good. Actually, if any of this resonates of putting your phone away when you meet with people, I would love for you to type a quick yes in the chat box. And I see Sahil joined us, which is amazing. Thanks for showing up. Cool. And if anybody has questions on this mindset stuff, make sure to also type it into the chat box as we're going to the second part of the masterclass. I feel like the mindset is essential, but it's just the beginning. What will come up is some more specific strategies you can use that will help you get from the small talk into the meaningful conversations. Yes, Sahil, he totally agrees with being on the phone is such a distraction, especially seeing people on dates only on their phones. Yes, I've seen that actually many times, that two people meet and both of them are on their phone. Or just when you are sitting in a coffee shop, notice what happens if two people meet and one of them goes to the washroom. It's maybe 5 to 10 seconds before the phone comes out and people are just immediately there, rather than maybe being more present in the moment and using this little break to see what else is happening in the place, or doing something else than checking your Instagram. Cool. Yeah, if there's any questions, I will get to it. But for now, this is my second big tip on getting beyond small talk, which I call small questions, big answers. Because the problem is with small talk often is, even for myself, like I have a lot of questions, as you can probably imagine, that that go a little bit deeper, that are not small talk questions. But half of the time, I'm not the first person to start a conversation. So when I meet somebody, most of the time, probably 2 out of 3 times, the question comes up. So what do you do? Or another very common small talk question. Actually, I'm interested if there's any question you feel you're getting a lot. If it is the so what do you do, type that one in. If it's another one, type that one in too. Because if we can have almost prepared answers or a prepared strategy on how to take those questions and turn them into meaningful conversations, then that's already half the battle. You don't even have to have super interesting questions yourself, as long as you can take other people's questions and turn it around. So what are some of the common small talk questions you get? And maybe we can type those in the box so we can just have like a little list of things. And I'll go back to that later. But exactly what Albert is saying. So what do you do? How have you been? That's actually, yeah, you can definitely do a better question than how have you been. At least they're interested, but that maybe is similar to the question, how's it going? It's more of a formality that people don't really want an answer to. It's just, hey, how have you been? Good. How are you? Good. Okay. And then you move on to the next thing. Something that I felt coming to Canada is actually been really hard for me, because I felt people actually were curious in knowing how my day has been. So I started telling them. But yeah, people here most of them, I would say, only want to kind of use it as a nice introduction to the conversation and then talk about something else. So I would say the most common question, in my opinion, is the "so what do you do" question. And the big problem I see with that question is it puts people in a box. So actually, Sahil, if you don't mind me, I will use you as an example, because I'm sure you don't mind. When you ask somebody what do they do, a lot of times the answer is very short. Oh, I'm a coach. I'm a lawyer. I work in finance. It almost ends the conversation right there. And it's really hard to figure out something else to say afterwards. And I would say that some professions, just subconsciously, I start putting people into these boxes. And immediately I'm not interested in actually getting to know them as a person anymore. So let's say, Sahil, when we first met, it was different, but let's say we first met and you told me, hey, I'm a lawyer. I probably would have been not very interested in getting to know you, because subconsciously I probably think or thought, not anymore, that lawyers don't have interesting lives. I'm not very interested in talking about law. And it would influence the types of questions that I ask afterwards. Whereas if we connect with a person first about something that is not work, we get to know them as a human, of what are their dreams, what are their goals. Then when we later find out what people's professions are, then there's so much more collaboration and so much more potential for people working together that happens. And I actually run this kind of upside down networking event here in Toronto where we do this. We focus on getting people to play and connect as humans first, and then at the end they find a way to support each other. Yes, Sahil says the same thing. We put people in the boxes that of that profession based on the experience that we have with other people in that profession. Like if I have met a boring accountant, then maybe I think all accountants are boring, but I've also met accountants that are super interesting and that do lots of things that are not just about numbers. But if we just talk about what people do and it ends right there, then we never get to know what it is. So if you would be interested in finding a really quick way to use this question and say something more interesting that makes people ask you some more questions and you can tell stories so you can connect with people, let me know yes in the comments, because that's exactly what I would like to share with you today. And I've used this so many times, and it doesn't apply perfectly for everyone, but we can make it work. The concept is still the same, but there's this formula. It's called the perfect intro. Actually, Clay Erbert came up with this, and he's a coach and he helps mostly entrepreneurs. So he came up with this 6-word intro, which is I help, and then you include who you help. So your customers, the clients, the company that you work for, achieve, and then the results. And I'll go through some examples in a moment. But I also added so they can, what is the bigger outcome? Okay, this might sound a little bit confusing, and that's why we'll go through some examples. But the amazing thing that happens is if we use that type of intro, we'll actually put the ball in the other person's court. And instead of ending a conversation with, I'm a lawyer, I'm a realtor, they will actually ask you, how do you do that? And then you can tell a story. So to go through some examples, let's play a little game, if you're up for it. I have a few statements that follow this structure, and if you can guess what they do, let me know. Okay, the first one. So I help teens, so teenagers would be the audience, achieve academic success, which is the result. Right, Jenna as a teacher. What else? What else could that person be doing? A counselor, teacher, guidance counselor. Right. So if somebody told you this question or this answer to your question, what do you do? What would you reply to that? Maybe just type your reply in the chat box as well. If somebody tells me, I help teens achieve academic success, Albert, I think, goes right for a deeper question. Tell me a story of a recent success. I would say most people, Kelly asked, sounds awesome, sounds impactful. Do you do that as a teacher? I actually would say that every question is somehow based around the how. How do you do that? Because people are now interested. So are you a teacher? Are you a guidance counselor? Like, what do you do? Let's do another one. I help women feel confident in their bodies. What could that person be doing? Okay, we got fitness trainer, we got personal coach, fitness trainer, coach. Yeah, so it could go into a few different directions, right? Like it could be a fitness trainer, it could be a personal stylist. I love that. Very different than fitness trainer. It could be a nutritionist. It could be a plastic surgeon. Like there's a lot of different ways it could go, but the kind of commonality between all of those examples is it's intriguing. People want to ask you more questions. Okay, we'll do another one. I teach entrepreneurs how to be more efficient. All of these examples, by the way, are based on people that I know. If anybody wants an introduction, let me know. Albert says accountant, Kelly says coach. Any other ideas? Business consultant. So yeah, as you see, it could be one of many things. And the idea is that with any of that intros, the idea is not to be completely correct and make it easy for people to understand. The idea is to make it intriguing for them to actually ask you a follow-up question. Because once you have them ask a question, that opens the door to take the lead of the conversation. So in the beginning, they ask you the question, so what do you do? And usually that makes people feel like, oh, this is not going to be interesting. I do this. And then the conversation ends. If you use this method by answering it in a little bit intriguing way, then I'll start a conversation that I think is much more interesting. Here's one. I help people feel less alone. What do you think that person does? And maybe some of you can guess. That's actually one that I sometimes use when people ask me, what do you do? And usually when people ask me, so how do you do that? I decide to not answer their question right away. Like I don't answer, oh, I run workshops, I create experiences, I create tools like the Ask Deep Questions cards. I usually tell a story because the one thing that we connect with each other the most is through telling personal stories. So at this point, when somebody asks me, if the conversation goes, hey, what do you do? I help people feel less alone. How do you do that? I start telling the story of me moving to Canada 11 years ago, not knowing anyone, and I didn't really plan to stay, but ended up falling in love, and now I'm still here. But the one thing that I've realized is I made all of these connections through networking and going to events, and at one point realized that I still felt disconnected, lonely, and isolated all of the time. And suddenly they're really intrigued. I get to tell a story, we connect. If they've had a similar experience of maybe moving to a new city or realizing that they have a lot of shallow relationships and they would like to have more deeper relationships, I'm already running with that whole conversation. Like, it's going really smoothly. I'll share one last one that is also really intriguing. I would love to know, what do you think that person does? I'm a nutritionist for your soul. I'm actually really interested to hear what you come up with. Somebody who offers cacao ceremonies. Interesting. What else? What else could that nutritionist for your soul do? If anybody has any other suggestions, let me know. Adventure travel leader. Ooh, I like that. Soul retrieval. Nice. Actually, this one I came up with because I was coming up with this metaphor of having a lot of small talk conversations and surface level conversations is kind of like eating cereal every day. Like, it almost feels a bit comfortable because you know what to expect. It's not super crazy ethnic or spicy food. It's kind of very simple, but it's also not very nutritious. So if you think about having eaten cereal every day for years, the one day where you finally have this delicious feast, that delicious feast that comes after the cereal, after the small talk, that's where you feel really fulfilled and nourished. And in a way, I was thinking, well, with that story, if I say this, in a way, I could be a nutritionist for your soul by helping you kind of find those more nutritious and healthy meals that are not small talk, but meaningful conversations. Anyway, that was just a fun little exercise, but thanks everyone for playing. I really appreciate it. There is actually a small talk cheat sheet that I created a few months ago that I'm more than happy to send you if anybody's interested in it. Basically, I listed all the small talk questions on the left and then came up with a better question to ask on the right. So if the question is, for example, what do you do? Another question you could ask someone is, what's the most interesting part about your job after you find out what they do? Or how did you end up in this line of work? Or even, how do you keep a work-life balance? Or if you don't even know what they do and you're not interested in learning what they do, you could ask them, if you could have any job in the world, which one would you choose? So if you want that small talk cheat sheet, or if you already have it, let me know in the comments and I can send that out after the masterclass. And one really cool thing, going back to like this point is, all about small questions, big answers. So this cheat sheet actually has, I guess, better questions, but in a way, nobody will notice if you take a question that you asked on the left and actually then pick the one on the right to answer. I know a little bit confusing, but let's say, for example, the where are you from question, which is like a typical small talk question. You could answer, instead of where you're from, you could answer, hey, I'm from this town, and what it's most known for, like what we did in the beginning, is it's like in this really nice wine region. And whenever I go home, I have this wine at this restaurant. What's like something your hometown is known for? So you could start the conversation and take it in a little bit more interesting direction by just almost reversing this and taking the questions on the right and answering them instead of the boring small talk questions. Yes, I will send that cheat sheet to everyone afterwards. So here's like another last example. If somebody asks you, like, was it Kelly or Jenna who said earlier, how have you been? Or like, how was the weekend? A better answer for that question might be, what was the best part of your weekend? Or sharing one highlight that you've experienced in the weekend, rather than just answering how was it, because that's usually a good, it was fine. Like actually answering what was the best part, or what was the fun experience that you've had, what were you the most grateful for on the weekend. That's what makes a conversation a lot more interesting. Cool. That was part 2. So if you have any questions on that, again, please let me know, but I'll send you the cheat sheet and we'll move on to the 3rd part, which is very much connected to this last part. So when somebody asks you, what do you do? You're going to answer in an intriguing way that makes people usually ask how. And then the way you answer is with a story. Because in a way, you don't want people to give you answers, you want them to tell stories. Because when we tell, especially personal and vulnerable stories, that's how we connect the deepest. And I have this quote in the bottom of my Ask Deep Questions box that says, I don't know if you can see that, relationships travel at the speed of vulnerability. So if we can get people to feel comfortable and trust you enough that they can share a vulnerable story, then that's how you're going to connect with people the fastest. So to find people's stories, you have to ask questions. And Dale Carnegie said this really great quote, which says, you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can make in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. So you've probably all heard the idea of being interested rather than being interesting. And I believe that's the big power of asking meaningful, deep, interesting questions rather than using the usual small talk questions. So you can use the cheat sheet for that. But also, if you want to come up with your own questions, there's actually one type of question that I would never use, and that is a yes/no question. And if you look at that image, you probably can see why. Some of those questions are, for example, do you live in the city? Is this your first time here? Do you like the food? It's those questions that literally give you only a yes or no answer, or the other person. And that just doesn't make the conversation flow. It ends the conversation. It creates these awkward pauses that nobody likes. And it, in a way, when somebody does that kind of several times, so if you ask someone 3-4 questions and they're all yes and no questions, they will feel like you're interrogating them. They will feel like they're in an interview, or maybe you're just going through a checklist. It doesn't feel like you're connecting. Just think about the amount of, the amount of what people say. If one person is just asking questions and the other person is just answering with one-word answers, that's not a real conversation. So what's better than asking these closed questions is open-ended questions. So any question that actually allows people to tell, again, a story. If you can ask people about experiences, that's a really great way to get them to share something. And I actually compiled a quick list of some of my favorite conversation sparkers, but I'd also be interested to hear from you. If you have any questions that you like asking people when you meet them for the first time, let me know, because I actually know that at least like Sahil, Albert, I know both of you have had some interesting conversations and probably have some good questions to start off with. Albert, what's juicing in your life right now? I like that. I actually have a very similar one. But I like the juicing part. It's it's very unique. I like it. I'll share a quick list of mine. And if there's one question on this list that you think you would like to use, please let me know which one it is, because I'd love to hear. Okay, so here are my favorite conversation sparkers. One that I use actually quite a lot, especially at work networking events. What exciting projects are you working on these days? Or even like, what's something exciting you're working on these days? Because in a way, when we ask people, what do you do? It almost, they have to talk about work. And there's some statistic where like 60 to 80% of people don't like their job. We're actually forcing them to talk about something they don't enjoy, which will not make for a fun, meaningful conversation. So if you ask instead, what's something exciting you're working on these days, they could say, I'm building a treehouse with my son, which is not work related, but that's really what they're excited about right now. Or they might actually be an entrepreneur and love what they do, and they will talk about some really exciting things that they do for work. So in a way, it gives people the choice to go in the direction that they want to go. Another few interesting questions are, what is your superpower? Again, something interesting. You could ask people also, if you had a superpower, what would it be? Which makes people think of like actually being a superhero, and they'll come up with like, I would like to fly or be invisible. And that might be an interesting conversation if that's something you're interested in. But asking people what their superpower is kind of a self-reflective question, which people will take some time to answer. So it might not be the first thing to ask someone, but definitely one to go a little bit deeper. Here's another one that I love asking, again, in a more like work-related event, which is, how do you motivate yourself? Which is, again, you really learn something about the other person. Plus, they might even learn something about themselves. I believe that the best questions actually are things that other people have never thought about, and they get some clarity by just answering it out loud. Another one that I actually use a lot is, what's a personal win you've recently had? That's also one that I suggest to anybody who is a team leader and wants to connect with their team. So if it is a work environment, but you want to ask a question that is a little bit more personal, but not too personal, asking about a personal win is something really easy that people can share something exciting, and usually they get quite happy to talk about something that they've accomplished. What's something new you've learned or want to learn? This is a great question, especially if the person is then sharing something you're interested in as well, because then you could decide, maybe you want to meet up again and learn it together. If it is, let's say, rock climbing. Oh, I always wanted to learn rock climbing, and I'm signed up for this class in like 2 weeks. You could say, if you're also interested in it, let's go there together. Or if it is something that you actually have done before, you could offer some resources or tips. So it's a quite interesting question, because in the end, you want to find people that share a same destination rather than rather than sharing the same past. And I've learned this from a friend recently, and it resonated so much with me. I'm sharing it with everyone. Think about it this way. I have a 6.5-month-old son, and because I grew up in Germany, I went to this meetup at the German school here in Toronto with other German parents whose kids speak German, and we should have so many things in common. Like, we all speak the same language, we all moved from Germany to Canada, we're all parents. There's so many commonalities, yet I was struggling a lot connecting with them, because it felt that we were all on a different path, going into different directions. Whereas at another event that I'm now making up, that I probably will have to find, where people are building communities, and everybody has created their own community or little movement, but could have totally different backgrounds. People could be from different countries, nationalities, religions. I think I would connect so much more with them than with the people that I share the same past. Does that make sense? Let me know in the comments if this makes sense. And the last question, which is actually one of my favorite questions to ask someone when I first meet them, is, if we were going to meet a year from now, with a bottle of champagne, what will we be celebrating? And I have this really interesting story where a little bit over a year ago, I actually asked that question to someone that I met at an event that I felt a little bit out of place. And we really bonded on sharing our goals, our dreams, to the point where at the end of the event, we decided, hey, wouldn't it be funny if we created a calendar event for exactly 1 year from today? We pick the location, we type in the goals that we set, and then we would just meet up. Even if we don't talk for the whole year, without having to confirm, we would just both show up and celebrate with a bottle of champagne. And I loved the idea, so of course we did that. And he loved it too, so that was great. And we didn't really talk much. We had like one email exchange afterwards. And then I ran into him 2 or 3 times completely by accident. Turns out we live in a roughly the same neighborhood, so we ran into each other at the farmer's market. Another day I was crossing the street and he was with his car right at the traffic light. And then when we finally were able to meet up, I showed up a little bit early and I was worried because I'm like, I didn't confirm. We said we're not going to confirm that this is happening. We're just going to show up. And it was like 5 minutes in, 10 minutes in, and I just wasn't sure if it's actually going to happen, if he's going to come. And then finally he arrived because he was late from another meeting, and we had the most amazing meal and conversation. And it felt like, in a way, so hard having to wait for that whole year, but at the same time, it made that meal so much more special. And that's all from that one question. I feel like we bonded so much that I now would call him a friend after just seeing him twice, just because of the quality of conversations that we've had and the depth of we were willing to go. And we talked about the challenges that we've had of accomplishing the goal. At the dinner, we were really vulnerable. So definitely try that question. So if there's any of those questions that you see yourself using, I would love to hear in the chat box which one it is. I should have probably, let me number this if I can real quick. That might make it a little bit easier. Oh no, now I have to move it. Okay, I can't number it right now. But just let me know which question you would use at an event next. Number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. What's a personal win is what Albert would use. Jonathan would use the learning one. Nice. Yeah, feel free to use any of those, 1 and 5. So it looks like it's completely split. Use any of those questions. And if there's any that you would ask, maybe you can share them in the chat box too, so we can share some of them. Albert also was asking, who's the most important person in your life and why? So I think the why follow-up question is actually really important. And that's actually a great lead into the next part. I don't think there's a one question that will give you all the answers. I believe that once you ask a question, you have to genuinely be interested in hearing the answer and listen so you can ask a follow-up question. And people usually always go a lot deeper once you ask the why question. And I don't know if you're around any like little kids, they ask why a lot. And I don't mean that you should just be asking why. But once you ask about people's motivations, that's where you go a lot deeper. So if somebody shares, hey, I am a lawyer, going back to that example, asking them, so what made you go into that profession? Or how did you choose to become a lawyer? What really inspires you about it? Those are the questions that get you to, really find out a lot more about people. So one more thing on the why question though is when you actually use the word why, it makes people sometimes go a little bit on the defensive because they feel like they have to explain themselves. So you could always ask the same question by just asking the word what. Like instead of why did you become a lawyer, what made you become a lawyer? It's a very slight difference, very small nuance, but the impact is very different. So give that a try. Okay, let's do another quick question. So we did a curious question at the beginning. And if you know my cards, there's 3 different levels. So we got curious, brave, and vulnerable. The next question is a brave question. And I would love for you to comment in the chat box. What do you value most in a friendship? Because I believe that friendships and connections, and probably one of the reasons why you want to get better with small talk or get beyond small talk is because you want to create more meaningful connections and maybe even friendships, or maybe you're even dating and you're trying to meet someone and connect with them. And I think that this is something that is super important. They have now proven that having poor social connections is as harmful to your health as smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. So just think about just being around people and being able to connect rather than just staying with small talk is almost like taking a prescription from the doctor. Like it is gonna, well, actually taking a prescription from the doctor is probably not gonna make you healthy, it's just gonna make your symptoms go away. But it's like eating that healthy meal. Let's go back to that analogy because I really love eating food. My wife's a chef. So if you feel like sometimes you want to go a little bit below the surface with your friends, or you have felt that like being isolated or disconnected alone, being able to take small talk and going a little bit deeper will open the doors for you to actually connect with people and create those deeper relationships. So let's see what Albert is saying. What does he value in a friendship? And actually, if any of this resonates with you, what the other people say, just give them a quick shout out too in the chat box. Let's connect everyone who's watching this live. Albert says, someone who's close to me in terms of life experience, humor, travel experience, and somebody who's interested in me. That last one actually really resonates with me, somebody who's interested in me, because finding the people where it is kind of a two-way street is sometimes really hard, but once you find them, that's where I think the strongest friendships happen, when you're not always the one initiating, but they are initiating to hang out, to call you, to support you when you're in a rough place. Kelly says, someone I can share both the ups and downs within life. Someone who can listen and provide meaningful feedback and also needs me as much as I need them in life. Well, that's exactly what I just said. Especially someone who can be there when you're not feeling the greatest. I think that's the types of relationships we need more of. Somebody who can really support us. And Jonathan says, being able to be vulnerable and support each other. Yeah, there you go. Here's this really interesting picture that I posted a while ago on my social media, and it resonated with a lot of people. If you take a piece of rotten fruit, like a rotten strawberry, and you place it next to really good fruit, what happens? The mold will slowly start spreading over to the good fruit, and in the end, both end up in a bad condition. And I believe that's almost the same thing that happens when you surround yourself with people that don't build you up and don't support you. They will start taking you down. If you've ever heard the saying of you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, that's really what I see as one of my mantras. You want to have people around you that lift you up and not like people that celebrate your success and that support you. So think about what it would feel like if you find your people, and if you could put that feeling into a in a word, maybe you can just type that feeling. Like if you can get through meaningful conversation, get through small talk to the meaningful conversations, really connect with people, find those people that are interested in you, that share the ups and downs, that both give you that both of you will have the chance to be vulnerable and support each other. What would that feel like? And I've struggled with naming that feeling a lot, but I found this video, and I'm sorry for the one person who's dialed in with the phone. You might not be able to watch it, but I'll send out the link to the replay. This video to me encapsulates everything that I see as finding your people. So let's hope that this works. And maybe you have seen this before, but it's a really quick video that I would like to show at least part of it. Because if you can find your people, that's like the best thing you can go for. I think you get the idea. And actually, Kelly was saying in sync, that's exactly what happened in this video. So for the person listening on the phone, there's a bunch of people dancing by themselves, kind of weird and dressed in super colorful clothes. But once they find each other, they get in sync, and it feels like they just connect. They have even the same destination, if we go back to that metaphor. And I feel like that's exactly what I was looking for when I came to Canada for the first time, and I didn't know anyone, was those types of people that really just get me, that I click with, that I didn't have to change myself around. So I would love to maybe take 10 minutes or 5 minutes to share a little bit about my Find Your People program that this is all based around. If that's okay with you, please let me know a yes in the comments. Basically, if you wanted to take what you've learned in this masterclass around meaningful conversations and getting beyond small talk, this would be a perfect next step. But I also know it's not for everyone. I'm actually looking for a few people to join the first cohort that is starting next week. And I'm looking for people who are the ideal fit. And there's a chance that you might be on this call. So I thought it would be, I really have to share this and make sure that I give you the next steps. And then at the end, there'll be another 15 minutes of Q&A where you can ask me any questions about the program, about connecting with people, about small talk, whatever you want. Okay, I can see a few yeses. So here's quickly what the Find Your People program is about. And I actually created this because after launching Ask Deep Questions, the connection cards, I've realized that there's a lot of people that feel like they don't have those connections around them. And this is what I would have wanted when I first came to Canada and was looking to find my tribe, find my people. And my mission now is, like I shared in the What Do You Do example, to make people feel less alone. And in a way that also means that I'm creating different experiences and tools, experiences like the events and tools like the cards, so people can have conversations that matter. Because the more people that have more meaningful conversations and know how to go deep, the more this movement can grow of people realizing that we're not that different from each other. Just imagine if everybody who's afraid of starting a conversation with a stranger would just start it and be able to get beyond small talk, what would happen with the world? That's really what excites me. So in the program, there's this is what it's based on. It's basically based on challenges. So it's 6 weeks long, and every week you get a challenge or an exercise to complete. And at the and they're all things that go from doing something that is a little bit outside of your comfort zone to things that are a lot more vulnerable. And the idea behind that is, when we're challenged, when we're outside of our comfort zone, that's where the biggest opportunity for growth happens. So the more you can go and do things that are uncomfortable, the faster you're going to grow and learn things about yourself. And if you can do it in a group of people that hold each other accountable and support each other, then that's the safest way to do it. All right, I'm just going to grab a sip of water. So aside from the challenges, the biggest thing that you'll get in the program is a 90-minute coaching call where everyone will join and share what were the lessons that they've learned from the activity or the challenge, but also maybe sometimes we don't execute on the challenges. There's something underneath that was holding us back. So we'll explore that and we'll hold each other accountable. We'll dig deep into finding what are those blocks and hopefully removing some of them so you can grow and succeed with the next challenge. And then the last thing is there's going to be a Facebook group or a WhatsApp group, depending on what people use that are in the program, where we can exchange contact information, where we can support each other in between the coaching calls. So if there's anything that comes up, you always have this group of people that you can reach out to. And it's only going to be 6 people that I'm looking for this program. So it's small and intimate. So everybody has enough time to learn and grow. And one of the first things of the program is based on the idea that everyone is like a dog whistle. So thinking of the video that we just saw of this one person dancing down the street in this neon clothing, they're the dog whistle. They've suddenly started attracting people that are like them, people that just get them. So the first step in finding your people is figuring out who you are and then showing up. So this is a quick breakdown of the 6 weeks on what this is based on. And the first week and 2 is getting clear on who you are, on your values, and what you're actually looking for, let's say in a friendship, in a connection, and coming up with a goal. So we all can share our goals and then hold each other accountable to see if we're executing on that. The second week is all based on curating your crew. So thinking of that you're the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with, we will evaluate your core relationships and see if there's already potential people that might become meaningful friendships, because we don't always have to look for new people. Sometimes it's all about going a little bit deeper with the people we're actually already connected with and taking those acquaintances and turning them into friends. In the third week, it's actually about making friends and not contacts. So we will be brainstorming some strategies on finding out where do those people hang out that you're looking for. Are there certain events, communities, or groups that you could join? And the goal is actually to find one thing minimum that is happening during the 6 weeks that you will attend, and then use some of the strategies similar to what we shared in this masterclass today to talk to people, connect with them in a meaningful way, and ideally find some people that are potentials for a deeper connection. And that also includes starting these meaningful conversations, because like I said, relationships travel at the speed of vulnerability. So the more you can create the space where people can feel like they can be vulnerable and share personal stories, the faster you'll grow. And then in the last 2 weeks, it's all about bringing those few people that you might have met in the first month that are potential BFFs, as I like to call it, and creating some kind of experience. And this could be like a one-on-one thing. This could be bringing people together for a small dinner or a potluck, or maybe it's going hiking. But the idea is to invite people for an opportunity to connect deeper and facilitate it to have meaningful conversations. And then in the last week, I'll share some tips on how to properly follow up with people and stay in touch so you can actually nourish those connections that you've made and turn them into long-term friendships. And we'll all celebrate together, because it is a group. There will be lots of learning that happens by just watching what other people are doing, by hearing what other people are struggling with. So I'm quite excited to already have, there's 3 people confirmed and 1 maybe. So right now I'm still looking for another 2 to 3 people to join me for the next cohort that actually starts next week and goes for 6 weeks. There'll be another one at the end of the summer, but it'll be a little bit different. As this is the first one, I'm actually also offering a big discount for people. If you were to take this course and we did 6 one-on-one sessions, that would be around $1,800. So for this being a group program, it'll probably be, when I run it later, about $600. And this is Canadian, by the way, for all the people that are tuning in from the US. Because it is the very first one, and I'm basically creating the program with you, I will make it very specific to the needs that you have, but also it won't be perfect. I'm actually only asking for $400 for the whole 6 weeks program. Plus you get a couple of bonuses, which includes, you get a deck of the Ask Deep questions sent to you. So you can actually use it when you connect with people or when you invite people. The second thing you get, which I forgot to put a picture there, is my deep dinner playbook. So again, if you're hosting a deep dinner, that gives you a step-by-step instructions on how to create this gathering, facilitate this gathering to have meaningful conversations and connections. And the last thing that I'm actually only giving away for this very first group that is joining is 2 one-on-one coaching calls. So at the end of the program, you have a chance to get on a call with me for 30 minutes each to ask any questions, and I can help support you kind of going forward. So I have 2 more slides, and then we'll go to Q&A. Who is this for? Just to make sure that you're the perfect fit for this. If you're like me and you sometimes feel disconnected, isolated, or alone, even though you're around a lot of people, then this might be a really good program for you. If you feel like your friendships are a little bit too shallow, whenever you hang out with friends, your soul is not nourished, then this might help you go deeper with them. If you just crave more meaningful conversations in your life, this might be good. And even if you move to a new city, and this might actually, maybe you have moved to a new city years ago and you're still struggling where to find people that you can really connect with, then this might also be perfect for you, because through the whole challenges, you actually will go out, you will meet people, you will have conversations, and we'll be here as a group to support each other. And I'll be there to help you work through any things that come up. So this is my Find Your People program, and I'm really, really excited to get the first group started. If you're interested, this is how it works. There's an application, a short application that you fill out, including answering the champagne question, because I would love to know where you see yourself in a year and what would we be celebrating. And then once you fill out the application, I will send you an email and we'll set up a call to just go over everything and make sure that there's no questions that you have and that you are actually a good fit for joining the first cohort, and that you're available on the right dates, all of that. So I'll actually post this link in the chat box right now. So if anybody's interested, you can go. Oh, I missed. Did I miss? I think I missed one space. Let me try this again. There you go. If you're interested in this, click to that link after the call. You can fill out the application, and then I'll be in touch in the next few days so we can get on a call and see if it's a good fit. Awesome. This is the last slide, and I would love to answer any questions that you have. If you want to, you can join me on video or audio, or just type the question in the chat box. And remember, you are the average of the 5 people that you spend the most time with. So if you have never looked at your current friends, this might be a good opportunity to just think of, oh, are those actually, if you take the average of those people, do they represent the person you want to become? And if not, then please contact me, connect with me, and I want to see how I can help you. All right, let's see if there's any questions. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and we'll go back to all everybody's pictures. Who has a question? Albert, you say it's interesting, it's mostly men. The average of the 5 people, you spent the most time with men. So is that something that you feel like you want to change? Because I don't think that is necessarily bad. I actually would say for me, it's quite interestingly the opposite. I would say that most of my closer friends are women and not men, and I'm probably looking to add some more men to it. Kelly has a great question. After you make great connections, how do you maintain that with distance and busy lives and everything? I would actually say that not having the time is the biggest reason that people share with me why they can't maintain or build deep relationships. So I think that question might resonate with a lot of you, with a lot of other people. And I guess two questions, maybe a follow-up question for you, Kelly. Are you saying that people are physically in a different place that you want to connect with? Because that might be a different answer than people are around you, but everybody has busy lives. Let me know. You meet them while traveling, right? I actually think it's interesting. When traveling, we often traveling on right, or public transportation. I think that when we're traveling, we have this almost different mindset that makes it easier to connect with people. It's also a lot easier to be vulnerable with strangers than people that are close to us, because there's a smaller chance of losing out on that relationship that we have already built. Like there's less at stake, less risk. But when you meet people while traveling and you're actually in different locations, I think it's always challenging to build closer relationships because it really needs quality time spent with each other. And things like video calls is probably the second best thing to in-person meetups. So if you can't be in the same location, I think getting on video chats a lot is great. Also, one thing I started doing is sending little video messages, let's say through Facebook Messenger, where you have like 15, 30 seconds. If video doesn't work, audio voicemails are great too, or actual calls. And the same way as with when you want to connect with people in person and you go deeper, the more unique you can make it to what both of you are interested in, the better. So I'll give you one example. So I have a lot of friends that still live in Germany, and I always struggle staying in touch with them. One of the things that we do is there's one group of friends, every time in Germany, we're planning something. We're planning either a potluck, a barbecue, going out to a party. This time we're actually creating a trip with all of us together. So it's a group of friends that all live in different places. And we all said, well, in September, we're all gonna be taking one weekend and we'll all travel to this one location, we'll rent a house and we'll just spend some time together. So that's something that just by planning that whole trip, we are connecting so much. Like we're constantly on chats and like, hey, what about this idea? What about this idea? Should we go here? Where should we stay? What should we eat? Like there's a lot of conversations that already, I feel like I'm connecting with them more just by planning it. And another idea that I'll share when it comes to virtual connections is I did a virtual cooking party with 2 friends. So it was 3 of us in 3 different places, and we chose one recipe that we all made, and we got the ingredients separately, and then we got on a video group call, and everybody started making their own meal with the same instructions. And then one person didn't find one specific spice, and then another person found like something else to put extra in. So in the end, we all created our own version of the meal. And then we made, everybody had to make their unique dessert. So we got to see what everybody will come up with for dessert and almost do this like dinner party, but virtual. Like in the end, we put the phone on the dinner table and all of us were eating together because it took about the same time to make the meal because we're all doing the same thing. So I don't know if those two ideas might be something to think about. Cool. I'm glad that it was useful. Any other questions? Okay, thanks Albert for joining us. I'll see you soon. I'll be in Portland in, I think, 7 weeks already. It's coming up soon. Okay, if there's no more questions, then I again thank you so much for spending some time with me. And I hope that there was something valuable that you got from this masterclass. I see Jonathan is back and it's getting quite late.
I have a question, yeah.
Where you are, you have a question. Okay, good,
Yeah,
let's go.
what's the investment in time for your program? Like Kelly said, we have busy lives, and
yes,
I have
exactly.
many things on my plate, and I don't know if it's yeah. So how long would it take?
So the calls themselves will be about 90 minutes per week, and then you'll have to keep some time to just execute on the challenges. Which could be different every week, but you do it on your own time. So some might include, let's say, take another half hour or hour to finish an exercise in the whole week, and you just have to have it completed by the time we have the next call. And others are more about maybe looking up some events or groups and see what's actually happening in your city or your neighborhood. So it depends on that as well. But the basic commitment, I would say, is if you have 90 minutes for the call and maybe at least another hour somewhere during the week to focus on this, then that's the minimum. But the more time you invest, the more I think you'll grow as well.
Okay.
Yeah, and in terms of time zone, I think that might be something we would have to chat about. So if you're interested, I would say fill out the application and then we can chat, because I'm still confirming with some of the other people that are in different places.
Okay, I will look into it. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. All right, it is almost 4 o'clock where I am. That means it's, what time is it in Paris, Jonathan?
It's nearly 10 p.m.
Right, so it's almost time for bed where you are. Yeah. I'm going to wrap up my day, but thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Kelly. Thanks everyone else that tuned in. I'll send a couple of links in an email in the next few days. But yeah, thank you so much for joining me. I'm hoping to see you all soon. Bye.
Okay, thank you. Bye.